What's up? Sorry, Joey, the original beanie's gone. It's absolutely gone. That's too dark. I just finished watching the last episode of Black Mirror. The problem with Maya, and it's kind of a problem and it's kind of not a problem, but the problem with Maya, which is all this dream state that we're stuck in, it's a problem. It's not a big problem, but it is a problem. And it's an insolvable problem. Unsolvable? Insolvable? So even whatever we have the reality condensed down into here, and it is condensed down in an attempt to control. It's not even an attempt to control, it's an attempt to grasp. Just like Solace is always talking about. He's always talking about grasping. And I've talked about grasping in plenty of my earlier videos. And the grasping bit, that was the part that I stopped trying to do after essentially being shown via weed in my early 20s that what humans want and what humans can't have is they want to grasp. Or rather, that's what I wanted. And that's what I couldn't have. I wanted to grasp. Now, while I was high, and mind you, again, my high isn't anybody else's high. My high wasn't anything fun. My high was more of a revealing. And once it started, I just wanted to grasp. That was it. And simultaneously, I was unable to grasp. Why do you think I was unable to grasp? Why was I unable to grasp? See, here, in this condensed form of that, and this is the same exact thing. This is no different. It's just a condensed form of it, to where the feeling of grasping, I'm not talking about just, like I said before, grabbing your steering wheel. That seems like you're grabbing. It's a condensed form of the feeling of grasping, and that's all that humans want. They want to feel like they have a handle. Pardon the bad analogy, but we like grabbing. We have fingers. We want to grab with the mind. We want to grab the reality with the mind. And we cannot grab the reality with the mind. It's ungrabbable. And I was shown that very clearly when I smoked. And the reason for that is because there isn't anything to grab. As solid as the reality may seem, and it seems solid, that grabbing desire of the mind can't be fulfilled. But the mind has to grab. It has to grab so that you have your paradox has been set up, and you're at the center of it. So you have this mind that just really wants to grab something, grab a steering wheel, okay, but doesn't quite work. You want to grab. You can't grab. That's a bit of a problem. And like I've said many times before, the grabbing / inability to grab nature of the mind is set up in such a way that when you don't try to grab, there isn't really a problem. So it's possible within your mind to stop trying to grab. But I don't know that it's possible to entirely stop trying to grab. I don't know that that's possible. So it's possible to let it go, let it go, let it go, let it go, almost completely. But there's always one last bit that holds on. Kind of like in some of the dystopian movies where there's just a few people left on the planet, and they're being ruled by cyborgs or malicious aliens or whatever, and they always hold out hope that, you know, they're not actually alone. And that's what the mind does, because the mind wants to grab. And here in the realm, here in the land of Maya, there literally is not something to grab. I mean that very literally. You may think I'm speaking metaphors here, but I'm not. I mean, the mind wants to grab something, and it's difficult to explain, but the mind wants to see something that has already happened. Like, it wants to have this is very silly to say. It wants repetition. The mind wants the same thing. It wants to see the same thing again. Once, ever. It never has seen the same thing again since it came into being. Ever. It has tricked itself into thinking it's seen the same thing, but it never has. And that's that itch that you have. Your mind is always... It's beautiful, okay? I've kind of set down my beef as mind, and I also know that I'm not just mind, but the mind is the most fascinating thing, at least to me, that there is. Because there's this constant searching for safety, searching for repetition, and it doesn't exist. But that's what makes the mind happy. Searching for familiarity. And what's familiarity? Seeing something that you know. What's something that you know? Something that, is the same. But truly, and I mean this, truly nothing ever repeats. It never has, and it never will. And it's a blessing and it's a curse at the same time. Because that's what mind wants, or at least at the very minimum, that's what mind thinks it wants. Mind thinks it wants that. But the problem is mind is also simultaneously, while salivating over the thought of seeing something repeat for the first time in its life, for the first time in all of existence, it also knows, it understands very deep down that to see the same thing would literally be the end of it. It literally can't happen. But that fear, the simultaneous desire to have this thing to grasp, this familiarity, along with the fear that it might actually happen someday, provides tension. Okay? Tension. It's some sort of an energy. It keeps us moving. It's equally on both sides. The desire for repetition and the utter horror at the possibility of it actually happening at the deepest level of mind, those two are equal and opposite forces. So they got you wavering back and forth between the two. And that's how your life is lived. And when people talk about salvation, they're talking about the stillness that's in between those two sides that are playing a constant tug of war. It's talking about a cessation. It's not talking about something happening. It's not talking about you getting somewhere. It's not talking about you achieving. It's not talking about any of that. It's talking about absolute stillness. Peace. Silence. Where the need to grasp and the horror at the possibility of actually grasping are no longer playing tug of war with each other. That's what peace is. That's what meditation is. Because after you've been on this carnival ride for who knows how long, for me it's been a really long time. I've been on this carnival ride for quite a while. After enough of it, and it's not that you would like to just see and explore, just see new things. That's not it. It's not that. That's not even what the consciousness wants. And what the consciousness wants doesn't matter anyway, because it's always the same thing. It wants to grasp, and it can't. Now, I'm not trying to speak for everybody here, and I'm not also trying to say that this duality that I've set up as the main driving force for the actually conscious entities here is the only modality of being aware. I'm not saying that. I'm saying for as long as I've been here, once I woke up to the fiction of future and past, then that's what it has been seen to be very clearly by me. It's just what it is. It's very simple. As far as Maya is concerned, and the apparent external world, including the whole body, you know, like I'm not. This body is the same exact thing as the stuff that's moving outside. It's just there's a closeness to the body. But until you find this stillness, and I'm not talking to bots, I'm not talking to CGI characters. They can't hear anyway, but to the conscious ones, it's infinite. The Maya projections are infinite. They're never ending. So when the mind holds out hope that it's going to find familiarity, it's truly a false hope. It really is. Incapable of repetition is the nature of consciousness itself. If you are aware, if you are having sensations happen, That's the nature of it. Incapable of repetition. And that nature breaks down meaning when it's truly looked into. Because meaning relies on familiarity and repetition, which truly doesn't exist. You can have the pretense at repetition, but as far as actual repetition, it's not. It's not there. So when you as mind, as consciousness, as the forever grasping mind at that which cannot be grasped, when you finally wear yourself out, or when it wears itself out, with you as witness, however you want to describe it, you come back to the silence, because the silence is your home. That peace is your home. You can't even escape it. It's like a brief foray into the world of matter, which is just a giant pretend world with a very elaborate projection system that makes it seem like there's some sort of a linear continuity. That comes in and covers up the silence for a couple thousand years, or however long it appears to be. But it's not fulfilling. The only thing that's fulfilling is the silence itself. And the silence doesn't even have a self. It's not the same thing as this bodily physical experience. It's not the same. It's simple. It's there. And it has no requirements. It has no goals. It doesn't speak. But it allows everything. It allows all the Maya. It allows all the mind's grasping, or attempts at grasping. That's the grace. That's the salvation. It's not at any point in the future, because the future just doesn't exist. How could it possibly be in the future? How could true salvation, if you want to use that word, which is not a good word for what that peace truly is, how could it be in the future? It couldn't. And what we and I'm speaking for myself here. I'm not trying to, of course, put this on anyone else, because this is my very unique experience, and it has led me to where I am now, which is back to being silent. That's where I live. I've been there since I stopped being high. I haven't moved. Not an iota. Apparent motion aside, I have not moved. I have not taken one step in any direction. I have remained as the silence, as the stillness, And when I do that, the Maya and the body, the dance, is allowed to be harmonious rather than while the dance is still going on, the mind is constantly like riding 3 steps behind in an attempt to grasp what the fuck is going on and creating a big old tension spot for the consciousness 2 steps behind the actual happening. And it's the most frustrating thing that could possibly be felt ever. I remember when I would be driving back to Oakhurst to visit my mom. Or perhaps my mom was driving and I was sitting there in the seat. While I was still having trauma flashbacks, like PTSD from this weed experience, I would sit there and watch the road. I would watch the mountain, like landscape as we drove by it. And I would expect at some point that it would start looping. Or maybe even just one. Didn't even have to be some sort of a causal loop where you're stuck and you're just repeating and repeating. I would just wait. I would wait to see a section just roll by again somehow. And I don't even know what it would look like to actually have any part of the conscious experience or conscious existence repeat itself. I don't know what that would look like. But that tension spot that the weed experience showed me gave the possibility, at least theoretical, of a repetition occurring. And that was back when I still had fear about things. So I would sit there in anxiety and fear that I would have this sort of deja vu thing, which we've all felt. The conscious experience is sort of a feedback loop, but it's not.